You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Now, last week, as you may remember, I talked about a surprise accidental discovery of life deep under the Weddell Sea in Antarctica.
I do love surprises.
This week, I want to mix it up a bit by talking about a surprise accidental discovery of life under the Weddell Sea in Antarctica.
Kirk,
It's a different story, I promise.
are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
you talked about this last
No,
week.
it's a different story, I promise.
Is
So
it
this is
about
really-
barnacles or sponges?
It's not, no. This is a really funny coincidence, actually. I was actually thinking of doing last week's topic like months ago, and then I got distracted by other things that like topics I found out about and got excited about, and eventually I'd actually forgotten about that story about the hole through the ice.
Mm-hmm.
The story I'm going to tell you today popped onto my radar recently, and it actually reminded me of last week's story, and that inspired me to bring both of these stories to the show one week after the other. So
Back to back.
here we go. So we're
Okay.
headed back to the Weddell Sea. This time of the year is 2021, and we're with deep sea biologist Autun Purser.
Okay.
And
What a name.
I know, he's German. We're actually in familiar territory here. We're on the Flichner ice shelf once again. But one of the things I found fascinating to contrast these two stories is that this story takes place on a boat. And that may seem incongruous with being on an ice shelf.
Right. So
the
you're
boat-
on a shelf that's ice, and you're on a boat
Let me
on the
let me help you
ice?
out. Let me help you out. It's an icebreaker.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So you're breaking
but
up
what
the
this
ice
instantly
shelf.
made me realize is that the ice thickness must vary considerably across the Flichner ice shelf, because in the
Uh-huh.
last story they were drilling it through 3,000 feet of ice
Right.
to get to the water below. And I don't care how awesome your icebreaker boat is, you are not just powering up and like having
Love to
the
see you
stern of the boat
try.
crash through a mile of ice, right? At
that's-
least not a mile down.
That's pretty
So-
much like a glacier, trying to like plow through with your pickup truck through a glacier. Like, no.
Yeah, it's not happening. So or trying to plow through a glacier with like your, your
snowplow.
fingertip or something. Yeah. So I was kind of curious. So I looked this up. The most impressive nuclear-powered icebreakers in the world are capable of breaking through about 9 feet of ice.
Okay.
So
I mean,
Clearly
that's still
we're in a-
impressive, but like,
we're in a different part of the ice shelf. I'm going to assume much closer to
Clearly.
the edge.
I didn't
Oh,
know there were
sorry.
nuclear-powered icebreakers, though. Wow.
Oh yeah.
that's awesome.
I think they're the Russian ones that operate like in the Arctic, not Antarctica.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right.
So the research team was actually trying to study interactions between surface water and the seafloor. They're, I think, more interested in like the chemistry of what was going on down there, but part of the process involves animals and how they affect the chemistry and whatnot. So as they were gathering data behind the boat, they were towing a submersible camera and just sort of recording what sea life they may happen to see. All right.
Was it a mermaid?
And no, actually, that would have been a bigger story than this. I now realize that I guess I'm telling the wrong story this week. It's not quite that exciting. I think it's pretty cool though. What they saw was the Jonah's icefish.
The what?
So
Jonah's
Jonah's
icefish.
icefish.
Oh.
It's kind of cool looking fish. I'm not going to describe it for you. You guys all have the power of the internet. Go look it up. But this is a fish that is restricted to the cold waters of the Southern Ocean. So basically all around Antarctica. They're a really weird cold adapted fish. And one of the things you often see noted about them whenever people talk about them is that their blood lacks hemoglobin.
I just learned about this, but it was
Did
a
you?
different
All right.
ice fish. It was
There you go.
the
Yes,
ocellated
because
ice
this
fish.
is This is true of all the ice fish. Okay,
That's
so if you remember
crazy.
if you remember from biology class, hemoglobin are the red blood cells in our blood, and they're what makes blood red,
Right.
and they're also pretty important because they're how we transport oxygen throughout our body. Well, in yet another example of nature finding more than one way to do the same thing, Jonah's ice fish transport oxygen in the plasma of their blood instead of in the hemoglobin.
What?
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah,
we
it's just
transport
sort of like-
oxygen in our plasma too. It's just not
Yeah.
very much of it.
It's not particularly useful. It's just
Right.
diffused in there. So this just is so weird, and this is apparently true, like I said, of all the ice fish family, and which I think you mentioned one, Rachel.
Yeah.
It's debated a bit, but there's around 20 species or so. They all live in extremely cold water, and I should point out that it's believed that they evolved from fish that used to make hemoglobin. This isn't like a separate line of fish that never had it. It's something they still have some of the genes for it. They just don't really make it or use it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no hemoglobin in their blood, it has a lower viscosity, or in other words, it's thinner, and they can get away with this due to some other body adaptations and the fact that very cold water has more dissolved oxygen than warmer water. And they have so they have bigger blood vessels and whatnot. They are moving the oxygen, the blood through faster because it's thinner. It's probably it's so cold. It's also good that it's thinner, and it's just they're so cool. They're so cool.
They're insane.
I've heard differing reports that their blood is either white or literally clear, which kind of makes sense if it's pretty much just plasma. Plasma's
Yeah.
clear.
Oh, wait.
So
So,
strange.
Kirk, wait. I have questions.
Yeah.
And maybe you can answer them.
I hope
or
I can
maybe
answer
not.
that.
They don't
Yeah.
have hemoglobin. Do they have what otherwise would be known as red blood cells?
Probably
I don't.
not.
I don't know. I don't think so.
The reason I ask, I mean, one of the reasons is in most animals' bodies, the size
Right.
of capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels, is
Mm-hmm.
limited by the size of your red blood cells. Because if you go
Right.
smaller than the size of your red blood cell, the blood cells can't get through. So it's about the same diameter.
Yeah, I was kind of using, in my mind, hemoglobin and red blood cells synonymously, but really hemoglobin is something in your red blood cells, and it's kind of what makes your red blood cells red. So
Right.
I wonder if they still have, would you call them red blood cells? I suppose you probably would.
Mhm.
Maybe they're just lacking the actual hemoglobin. That's not something I really dove into because
Yeah.
what I was
No.
going to tell you next is that, as weird as this is, that's not actually the subject of my talk
Oh.
this week.
We do.
Oh, okay.
You discovered
So,
this
so
new
I didn't
fish,
go. I didn't
so-
go away. Not
and
in. Whoa,
talk
whoa, whoa,
about
not,
it.
not
and
not a
then
new fish.
Make me
Not a new
wonder
fish.
that I have to take this off my list.
It's only a new fish for you. Okay.
Okay.
Because like scientists knew about this. This is not like a new fish they discovered. They just found them, saw them swimming around under there.
Okay.
And what's interesting is not that they saw one of these fish, because like it's a fish, they live in that area. It was that as they were kind of moving the camera along, they started to see that there were Jonas ice fish nests on the floor of the sea. And when I say they saw nests, I should specify that they found a lot of them. And I mean a lot.
Huh.
Purser noted that one of his crew had seen nests on the camera and kind of mentioned it. And so then when Purser stopped back to kind of see how things are going, camera's still working and whatnot, a half hour later, his crew was seeing a bunch of nests again. And he was like, oh, is this like another patch of nests? And they're like, no, this is the same patch of nests. We've been going over it for half an hour.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, well, it gets bigger than that because they kept on watching and they saw nothing but constant ice fish nests on the bottom of the seafloor for the next 4 hours.
Wow.
What?
And in total, they did 4 surveys in the area. I'm assuming they were doing like transects. And each time, there were constant nests on the camera. So they were able to do some measurements, and here's what they concluded.
Oh no.
The total estimated number of nests under the ice shelf is 60 million nests.
What?
What? That's amazing.
Right? Now they estimate the
Oh
total
my.
area of nests takes up 92 square miles
Oh my
of seafloor.
goodness
Wow.
gracious.
They also estimated that there were approximately 1,735 eggs per nest, and every nest was guarded by like one fish. So we're talking
Mhm.
about millions of fish guarding billions of eggs. It is like mind blowing. I tried to put I tried to put 92 square miles into context. That's an area that's larger than like the entire area of the city of Seattle, right? It's slightly smaller than the entire area of Palm Springs. It's also, for our more international listeners, that's double the size of Paris.
What?
Yeah. So if you happen to have ever been to any of those places, you start to get an idea of the acreage that's involved. I was also kind of wanting to know about like the density though, right? So
Mhm.
they came up with that there was essentially one nest per every 4 square meters. And 4 square meters is, roughly 12 square feet. So I
Mhm.
picture a box 3 feet by 4 feet and plop a nest in the middle and then repeat that tile pattern until you're covering 92 square miles. It's basically like a nest every 4 feet or so. I mean, it is
Holy crackers.
super amazing. Yeah, this is now the largest known nesting colony of fish in the world.
Yeah.
That again was discovered on accident. Right? They weren't looking for this. They were trying to study
No.
like water chemistry, and we're like, oh, let's put a camera down there and see what we can find. Oh, we just discovered the largest nesting colony of fish known in the world,
Is not what
which
we
is
set out to
certainly,
do. But
yeah, it's
too bad.
totally cool. It's certainly going to be studied more. There are already calls out there to put protections in place and preserve this newly discovered natural marvel.
Right.
The Ross ice shelf actually has protection now, but this particular ice shelf doesn't have particularly any special protections on it.
Mhm.
And so people are saying like, hey, maybe, this is, I mean, combining this with my story from last week, and it's like, this is probably kind of a special place that we need to protect more than it
Yeah.
already is. So, I just thought it was super cool. And these two stories just go together, that they're two stories of accidental discoveries when people are looking for other things, and they happen to be in
At
the
the
same
same spot.
place.
That is really cool.
Which
So
also, though,
what
I
I'm
mean, come on,
hearing-
under the ice shelf is a place we probably
Yeah.
haven't explored as much. So it's
Yeah.
maybe not so surprising that we would find um, two things in a place that hasn't been explored as much. But I just thought they're both really awesome stories and wanted to share them with you. I would say my sources included this week's Science Alert and Wikipedia.
Ooh. I will say that so what you're saying pretty much is if you want to find something new and unexpected, go to the Weddell Sea.
Apparently, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
You'll need some
Go
Go
equipment
somewhere dark
Yeah.
and cold. And I tell children often, like, you want to discover some new species, like
Mhm.
don't go into mammals. Like, study something that no one else is studying right now. Like,
Oh yeah. Get
diatoms or
specific.
something.
Yes.
Like you got to, go so things that are hard to see and people overlooked. That's where you're gonna find stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, we're gonna go to break, and when we come back, it'll be Rachel's turn to share something amazing. Strange by Nature podcast is brought to you by listeners like you who have joined the Society of Strange, our membership group on over at patreon.com/strangebynature. Society of Strange members can join at one of 3 different membership levels and help support the show and also get some fun stuff like water bottle stickers or access to super secret content. So a thank you to those who have joined already to help make this podcast possible. If you haven't joined yet, we'll see you soon over at the Society of Strange at patreon.com/strangebynature. See you soon.
Welcome back from break, everyone. in honor, I looked ahead because we record these way in advance.
Don't
And-
now you're taking the magic away. They all know, now they know that we're.
I'm pretty sure they
These
knew
are-
this. Anyway, I found out and figured out that this episode actually comes out a couple days after Valentine's Day. So I
Yes, it
decided
does, yeah.
that I wanted to make it a hearty episode.
If
and
I had
talk
known about
hearts.
that, I have an episode that I had been saving up for Valentine's Day, and I didn't think about it.
No, the
next
one
year.
you're saving is for Valentine's 2023, Victoria.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
At this point.
So I want to talk about hearts today.
Oh.
Aw.
So generally speaking, hearts I think are
I'm-
generally.
I want to say, Rachel, I'm really pumped for this topic.
Yes, that's the spirit. Generally speaking, broad terms, the heart is an organ in a body that is the center of the circulatory system. Okay, it pumps
Yeah.
blood
Fair.
to all
Yep.
the parts of the body, and generally the heart regulates the direction of the blood to and from different areas. Usually, there
yeah.
are different parts of the heart. Like there's usually an atrium and a ventricle, but not always. So basic.
Okay.
The heart itself, thank you. The heart itself has its own electrical system, which is okay. We nod and we accept this because it's just part of our daily lives, but that's weird. Our bodies have multiple electrical systems, and our heart is one of them, and it's independent of the rest of our body. Well, not from the rest of our body, but it has its own electrical system that is different from our brain of sorts. Anyway, so that is what it helps the heart do the work of contracting and relaxing to pump the blood through the body. So that's the basics about hearts. So let's talk about some weird ones.
Yeah.
So cephalopods, this includes squids, octopuses, cuttlefish,
Nautiluses.
nautilus, that's the other one. They all have 3 hearts. So they don't just have one, they have 3.
Oh.
Amazing.
2 of those hearts are called brachial hearts, and they are right next to the gills of those cephalopods. And they're specific to pump blood in and out of the gills to get as much oxygen, dissolved oxygen, into the bloodstream as possible. And then the 3rd heart is for pumping blood to
Makes
the
sense.
rest of the body. Okay? Like a main heart, and then 2 that do a lot of work themselves. So 3 hearts.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty
Yep.
cool.
This is why, by the way, that like the cephalopod version of Cupid shoots 3 arrows at once.
Ooh, you have to hit all 3.
Maybe it's like a little mini trident with 3 tips.
I think that would be more accurate and
Damaging?
yes.
All right, sorry. Moving on.
Blue whales, no surprise,
whales, yeah.
have the largest heart of
Right.
any creature.
How would you compare it? How would you compare it to the size of like a Volkswagen Beetle?
Whales have hearts the size of golf carts.
That's
Okay, a little smaller.
yeah, still pretty large though.
Still quite large.
They weigh about 400 pounds.
Oof.
It's a heavy golf cart.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And per beat, the blue whale will pump out 40 to 60 gallons of blood.
Wow.
To
Oh,
give some
that's a
context
lot.
and perspective, human beings have about 1.2 to 1.5 gallons of blood in our entire body.
Yeah.
So
Wow. So you're pumping out like 60 humans a beat
thereabouts,
there.
yeah.
Did you
Um,
happen to see how wide their aorta is as it
You
leaves
can
the
walk
heart?
through it.
Yeah.
I did see it. There.
You could walk through it, or I could walk through
You know
it.
what, Kirk?
Is it taller than a Rachel?
I'm just trying to understand the different size humans.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't look that deep into that one. It's very
So
large.
the average size human could
Yes.
walk through it. Very large. Gotcha.
Very.
That's impressive.
There's an aquarium somewhere that has or used to at least have an anatomy of a blue whale, and you could walk through a blue whale heart somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it was.
Cool.
Other cool and weird hearts, strange hearts, you might say. Zebrafish are.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, what about them?
They are able to regenerate up to 20% of their heart tissue if it is damaged, and they're able to do this within 2 months.
Impressive.
Like completely
Yeah, that's pretty
regenerate
cool.
their heart tissue, which we haven't really been able to see anywhere else.
No.
We talked about the biggest heart, and now we're going to talk about a little tiny one. The pygmy shrew has the fastest heartbeat. It is a very, very small mammal. It has the fastest heartbeat of any mammal at 1,200 beats per minute.
Just,
Ooh, that's humming.
yeah.
Wow.
I was
This
gonna
is the
say.
reason why small rodents and mammals like that do not have very long lifespans.
Yeah.
Wow. I just think about when you're doing this. This is an insight to how my
Mhm.
brain works. That this is where I went with this. I thought about when I'm doing a CPR class, and they want you to do like pump to staying
Yeah.
alive. It's like the
staying
rhythm,
alive.
Pump, staying
Staying
alive.
alive.
And I'm thinking if you had to do that to a shrew, I just don't. I mean,
You wouldn't
that's
be
too
able
many.
to do
That's
it.
too. You can't. No, you can't do it.
Shrew has a heart attack. The shrew is just.
can't
I'm
do it.
sorry.
That's where my brain goes. My brain goes to the song "Staying Alive" at 1,000 BPM.
Fun fact: Dancing Queen also works for doing CPR.
Mm. And sadly, so does Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe don't use that one if you're giving someone CPR. Moving on. Giraffes. Okay.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
giraffes.
Have lopsided hearts. Well, okay. Most things kind of do.
Like more lopsided than
Right.
normal. Yeah.
The thickness of their ventricle wall is like triple. Oh, no. It's more than triple. For example, the
triple.
left wall ventricle is about 8 centimeters thick, whereas the right ventricle
Okay.
wall is about 1.5 centimeters thick. Okay.
Right.
I have an idea why that might be, but will you tell us?
So the right side only pumps blood into the lungs, all right, which are right next to the heart.
Which on a giraffe
Right.
is right next to it, right?
The
yeah,
left
okay.
side has to pump blood everywhere else, including up the 6 feet to the head. So
Yeah.
the
Right.
thickness is pretty much the muscle power. So it has a really muscular heart to help pump blood up and down.
Well, that's cool.
Which is really
So
cool.
its heartbeat goes dum dum.
Pretty much, yeah. Frogs and reptiles, instead of having a 4-chambered heart, actually have a 3-chambered heart. So they have 2 atria, and they have 2 atria and 1 ventricle rather than 2 ventricles, except in the crocodiles. The crocodile has 4 chambers. And the weird thing about crocodiles, there's many weird things, but it uses that, but it also has an extra aorta leading from the heart down to bypass its lungs into its stomach. So whenever the
Wait, what?
crocodile, it has
like not into
like
its stomach,
to
but
its
to
stomach,
its
right.
to bring
To
blood
its
to the
stomach.
stomach. Okay, yeah.
And it does this to it allows the blood to bypass the lungs and get to the stomach to have the carbon dioxide that's in the blood to produce more gastric acid to allow them to quickly dissolve the bones in the chunks of the prey that it swallows, up to 10 up to 10 times faster than the mammals that do that. Okay.
Fascinating.
But not all animals have hearts. Some have no hearts. Some animals have pseudo hearts, including earthworms.
Hmm.
How do those work?
Well, that's a great question. So, earthworms. Oh man, how do I really describe earthworms?
Well, they're
Okay,
they're long and
they're
slimy. And
Yes, that's also true.
so how do they
So
have
they have
blood, right?
Well, not everything has blood.
That's
So
true.
it gets bizarre. So how earthworms work is they have like they have cilia. No, that's starfish. Starfish have cilia that move water through their things, which is completely different. But an earthworm, so they have pseudo hearts. They either have 5 hearts or no heart. So they don't have the chambered muscular organ that I talked about earlier. But they have 5 special blood vessels that contract in order to pump blood through the body. So that's
Gotcha.
how that one works.
Well, they're pretty tiny. It probably doesn't require a
It does
large
not.
heart to
No.
move everything around
No,
in there.
it does not. Which is strange because, like, okay, you don't have a heart, but you do that. Fine. A cockroach, however, they do have a heart, and it has 12 to 13 chambers.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
And they're all arranged in a row. And they use separate muscles to pump the blood through their body. So if something happens, they're able to just keep going because it doesn't really affect them all that much. Insects in general,
If something were to happen to one of those,
one
you
of
mean?
the
Or, like,
chambers,
what
it
do you mean if
doesn't
something
really
happened?
bother them in the slightest
Okay.
because they're just like, okay, cool, that's fine.
The rest will pick up the slack a little bit.
Exactly. Sea
Cool.
stars or starfish and other echinoderms don't really have a heart. Like I was saying earlier, they have little tiny cilia, which are like hair-like structures that are beating constantly to pump seawater through pipes and bags that are in their body, kind of. Because they don't really...
Pipes and bags.
They don't have blood.
Yeah.
And that's really all I have for you today. Like, there's lots of other strange hearts out there, but I don't want to take up too much of our time. I do want to give credit where credit's due and say that National Geographic had a really great Valentine's Day article. And so did Ocean Conservancy and Atlas Obscura. There's quite a few that I used, but they all did a great job. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, it'll be Victoria.
Hey, we're back from the break, and I want to talk about Charles Darwin.
I'm ready.
Oh, Chucky D.
Chucky D.
Woo-hoo.
I love Charles Darwin.
So, as most people know, he came up with the idea of natural selection. Within a species, individuals are going to have different traits, and some of those will contribute to their reproductive success, leading those successful traits to be passed on to their children and so forth, leading to the gradual evolution of the species. Well, so his first and most famous book, On the Origin of Species, was published in 1859, and it made a big splash and was very controversial, and still is.
Yeah.
Still is to some, yeah.
Congratulations. Almost 200 years later, still a source.
A dubious.
Darwin saved some of his even more incendiary ideas for his follow-up book 12 years later, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So besides confirming that, yes, indeed, evolution also applies to humans in this book, yeah,
Does it?
Gasp.
he greatly
Yeah.
developed his ideas on sexual selection, which was something he mentioned in The Origin of Species, but didn't really talk about that much. So,
Okay.
sexual selection is a kind of a form of natural selection that's based on choosing a mate. And he hypothesized this as the reason that males and females can often look very different within a species, and that some animals have features that would otherwise be detrimental to their survival.
Right.
So, one form of sexual selection would be males competing with each other for females. So, an example would be the antlers of a deer, which, are in fact
Right.
otherwise a maladaptive feature. And antlers can get a deer killed by getting tangled in things or tangled in other deer's antlers. I used to work
Well, and they're extremely energy intensive to create.
that
in the first
also.
place, too.
Yes.
So male-male competition is one form of sexual selection. The other form is females choosing which male they like best based on how they look or behave. So the classic example for this is that a peahen is supposed to choose the peacock with the prettiest and longest tail feathers.
Beautiful.
Right.
Ooh, you
Yes.
have lovely plumage.
Tail feathers that are ridiculous.
Let me come on over. You seem to have the nicest plumage. Yes, thank you. Just accept that weird voice from me. There you go.
That's Rachel's peahen voice.
Yeah, that's what
There you go.
Yeah.
So, following the publication of this book, the ideas about male competition were mostly accepted pretty quickly. Surprise! It confirmed a lot of pre-existing biases about male aggression and female passivity. The ideas on female choice and male ornament were largely ignored until the 1930s.
Of course.
To start with, because they were not considered as important as natural selection. And it was also considered implausible that animals could have a refined enough aesthetic sense to distinguish different male ornaments. Sort of was ascribing like artistic appreciation to animals, which people found hard to take in. And also the more active role of the female wasn't really going down so well with, people at the time.
I'm rolling my eyes so hard.
Yeah. In 1930, Ronald Fisher, who was an English biologist and statistician, developed the idea of sexual selection further and noted that he theorized that there could be an accelerating positive feedback loop where females choose the fancier male ornaments and those evolve very quickly in response to the females actively choosing them. But this idea,
Makes sense.
He published this, but the idea wasn't really examined or tested much in biological research for 50 years. And I want to talk about the animal that finally did help demonstrate that these ideas are true. And this is the long-tailed widow bird. Scientific name is, Euplectes progni. It's that one,
that
yeah.
one.
Oh,
Gotcha.
clearly.
long-tailed
Yeah, gotcha.
Of course,
widow
I
bird.
see that all the time.
It's common in the grasslands of southern Africa, from Kenya to Angola to South Africa.
Okay.
The main bird itself is about, so they actually look quite a bit like a red-winged blackbird. They're
All right.
the males are all black. They have red and white or yellowish shoulder epaulets, and their bill's white. It's kind of a conical bill. Fairly strong resemblance to a red-winged blackbird, actually. And they're about 20 centimeters long in their body. But breeding males, the tail feathers can be an extra 30 to 50 centimeters long. So that's like a foot to foot and a half longer than a
That's
non-breeding male or a
impressive.
female. So it's pretty dramatic. They fly with their tails kind of drooping down. It's an effect that's called keeled. So it sort of is in a sort of a fan shape in a vertical line under their body. I read a rumor that they are unable to fly in wet weather, but then I read another source that seemed a little more credible that said that this is not actually true, that they can fly in wet weather. But,
Fair enough.
those long tail feathers do hamper them somewhat. as is seen
Sure.
in peacocks and other species with very long tails. So the guy who figured out about the long-tailed widow bird and sexual selection is Malte Andersson. It was at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. And so in 1982, he was doing some other work in southern Africa, and he became interested in the widow bird and its ridiculously long tail. And he came up with a very clever experiment to test whether females would indeed prefer males with longer tails. Clever, but quite simple.
Does it cut
So-
the tails?
Yeah, the long-tailed widow bird is polygamous, and a male defends a territory with females that he mates with, nesting within the territory. And so Anderson captured and manipulated the tail feathers of a whole bunch of different males and then observed the effect that this had on their mating success. So some males had their tails shortened to 14 centimeters, and then he took the feathers that he cut off of those guys and glued them onto the tails of other males. So they had a
I
extra
love science.
Figured that was coming.
extra 25 centimeters of tail on their
They
already
got
long
crazy
tails.
long. Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then there were two types of controls, actually. So some males he just captured and released, and then some he captured, cut their tail feathers, and re-glued them right back on, in case the cutting and gluing procedure itself was somehow affecting the outcomes.
Wow. I mean, I salute his commitment to controlling his variables. That's impressive.
Also, this paper has the coolest graph. So he represents the results in a bar graph showing, how many breeding females per type of male treatment. And on top of each bar, he perches a little silhouette of a male with the tail hanging down along the bar. And it shows you whether it was cut, whether it was an extra long tail or extra short tail. So you can just see right away. Yeah.
Well done.
Good job,
well
sir.
done.
Good job.
At any rate, following the treatment, the males with these super extra long tails with the glued on extra feathers had significantly more mating success than the other males. So he demonstrated that, in fact, females did prefer these extra long tails. But, they had a lot of trouble flying around. And this is something else that Fisher talked about, which is, and I think Darwin too, which is that there's this this kind of interplay between females choosing the fancier and fancier ornaments on the males, but then that comes up against physical limitations on what males can survive. And this is still so other scientists have repeated this experiment in other species of birds that have long tails or similar ones, and it's been demonstrated many times that sexual selection by females does in fact occur. But there's still a lot of back and forth about what the ornaments represent, whether they are merely kind of an outward show of how fit the male is, like if he's very fit, he can grow these extra long tails, or if it really is that plus the females just really liking the way something looks.
Right. And how do you tease that out? That's because you often hear where it's like, I teach a lot about birds, and they say, oh, well, if the male is really brightly colored, let's say that takes a lot of carotenoids. We talked about carotenoids earlier, and you need to have a healthy diet in order to create those bright colors. The females then know that, oh, this is a male who knows how to find a good, diet, and he's going to be a good caretaker for the children. And I'm going, is that really what's going through the bird's brain? You know what I mean? Are they like,
ooh, shiny?
I bet he's going to be a good... Right, yeah, exactly. And I mean, let's be honest. How much are humans the same way? I mean, do you fall for someone because you're like, oh, you know what? I bet they're going to be a really great caregiver. This has been talked about with... won't go into too many details, but like people say, oh, I bet she's going to be able to feed my children. And you go, really? That's not a thing that ever goes through your head. Someone sees someone goes, yeah. And that's about as far as it goes. You know what I mean? Like and why do we think it's any different in animals that have, in a lot of cases, a less developed brain, where they're not even having like language or anything, that they're not making complex calculations about reproductive fitness. It's just like, oh, I like that. Like that seems so much more plausible to me.
And there are biologists, ornithologists out there arguing like that. For example, I found a paper of one arguing that, bowerbirds have an aesthetic sense. And those are those birds that create these sort of elaborate little huts and stuff with colored things in Australia.
Right.
Elaborate barely
Yes.
even begins to describe it.
A topic for another day. But
Yeah.
and then there's this book.
Exactly.
There's this book that came out a few years ago by this guy. What was his name? Richard Prum. He wrote a book called The Evolution of Beauty: How Darwin's Forgotten Theory of Mate Choice Shapes the Animal World and Us. And he really argues that, animals can sense beauty. He also gets a lot of pushback from evolutionary biologists who are like, well, maybe, kind of, not really.
Yeah.
So it's it's a debated point.
It's complicated, yeah.
Because, then you have to think about, like, well, why do we intrinsically go, ooh, you're pretty? Do our brains, like, in our, like, way deep down, are they like, oh, this person looks this way, they're put together, they're doing all of these, they look however you particularly prefer, and they seem like they'll be able to provide, kind of thing, or be able to support, like way back in our brain where we're not even conscious of that. It's possible. It's
it's if we can't even really understand it in
Yeah.
ourselves, the species that we are, makes it pretty tough to really understand it in other species.
Yeah.
But if we can't even articulate it for like our own person, like I can't really tell you why I think my wife is the most beautiful woman in the entire world, which by the way she is, but like I can't put my finger on that, right? It's just something that I know to be true. So it's like, how do you?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Fascinating. Thank you, Victoria.
Well, it actually reminds me of a fun topic now that I'm going to have to add to my list that is tangentially related. So people will be hearing that at some point too.
Interesting.
All right.
Well, thank you all, everybody.
Yeah, sorry. Keep you in suspense. We'll end it there.
We'll hear about that another time.
Thanks for coming along on the
Here on
journey this
Strange
week.
by Nature.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.